joined here by my good friend John, my brother from another mother. He's kind of like my neighbor up in New York City. John, how was your week? How's it going?
Doing well, Craig. Really excited to be here. Happy Friday. I can't believe. So this is our concept, right? To have a happy hour on a Friday. Last show, we did it on a Thursday because it was National Tile Day. Yeah, so it was a good reason to do it on a Thursday. And who knows, maybe in the future we'll mix up this podcast and do it at other times, other days. But right now, because it's happy hour all the time, but it's Friday.
We should stream 24 hours a day, talk about tile all the time, all day long.
I think that's a good plan. How was your week?
My week has been good. It was busy. We had a lot going on this week, and but made it to the end. I think my entire family is here waiting for me to take them to dinner, and I said we can't go to the dinner before we have the happy hour. So
that's true.
We're having the happy hour. We got drinks. You got drinks?
I do have drinks. Yes. Cheers.
Cheers.
What are you drinking there?
Before we get going on what we got happening on the show today, which is going to be exciting as always because you're here with us, let's take care of some paperwork, as we like to say. So we want to hear from you. This is your show. This isn't John and I's show. This is your show. So please submit your comments. Let me know what's going on. Let me know what's happening. If you want to ask us a question that is related to tile, we want to answer it. And if we can answer it online, we'll try. Now, if you're not watching live from one of the many platforms that we're streaming to, you can still leave a comment. If you're watching on a rewind, leave a comment in the post and we will get back to you and maybe include it in a future episode. Right, John?
That's true. And what I'd like to ask everyone out there is post where you're watching from. That's really pretty interesting.
That's a great idea.
I would like to see that. That would be cool. So if you're out there watching live or on a rebroadcast of this podcast, please let us know where you're watching from and we'll check it out.
Yes, I look forward to those comments coming in, and I see we got somebody from Youngsville, North Carolina, which is right next door to me. John Tedesco says he's here.
I don't know how that came.
John, how did you do that?
I didn't do that. I don't know how that came up.
You're watching from right here. Great. John, last week was National Tile Day, and National Tile Day is special because really kind of coverings brought that. I don't know if it was voted. Was that a Congress vote? Did we vote on National Tile Day?
Definitely coverings made it up. I don't know if it got far as Congress or Supreme Court, but it's definitely a day.
Tax-free sale day, which would be great.
Exactly. But National Tile Day is sort of the unofficial launch of, I think it's the unofficial launch of coverings coming up, right? We're about 7 weeks from the covering show, April 18th to 21st, I think.
18th to 21st in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, it's a great convention hall, the Orange County Convention Center. Beautiful downtown. Well, it's not downtown, but beautiful Orlando. Really phenomenal hall. Great show. And if anyone wants to know more about that covering show, our first show, which was last week, you can find it, recording of it. Where can people find it?
Yeah, that recording lives live on both John and I's YouTube page. Now, that's Tile the World, and John's YouTube channel is The Tile Channel. You can find it there. I'm assuming you can find it on Twitter and LinkedIn, but it's easy to find on our YouTube channels. And John, let me see if you can answer this riddle, because we talked last week about coverings. This week, we're going to talk about chimichangas. Is that right?
Yes, chimichanga. And if the Spanish people at the show are cringing right now because it's CEVISAMA.
CEVISAMA.
Yeah,
so what is the relation between CEVISAMA and coverings? This is a stretch.
All right, that's a good question.
Let's see if we can answer that.
Spain is known for their tile productions and their style and design. So they're really an industry icon in the tire industry is the Spanish manufacturers. Yep. So they have their show that's in Spain showing all the new products. in the United States, we have our own show, which is called Coverings. And Coverings, there are manufacturers in the United States, and there's a U.S. pavilion at Coverings. But a big part of the Covering show are factories from all over the world.
That is the wrong answer.
Yeah, it's the wrong answer.
The answer I was looking for is Florida's biggest fruit is the orange, and CEVISAMA is in Valencia, which is orange juice. So, I mean, I guess you were more on topic, but I was looking for oranges.
Wrong. All right. Next week I'll get your question. So yeah, I didn't think of that. Valencia. So yeah, well, it's held at the Valencia Fairgrounds, which is really beautiful. It's a real Mediterranean, cosmopolitan kind of city, very friendly, a lot of food. And here's some videos that we've gotten from the show. And it's just
Valencia, it was showing the outside, and now when I clicked on it, it came to the inside.
Yeah, well, yeah. So we immediately go to the inside. So huge pavilions, multiple displays. I think there's about 850 exhibitors, and those exhibitors aren't 8-foot tables. They're like monster vignettes, really. And you can see here, it's just incredible. And
John, before we start talking about CEVISAMA,
yes.
I have to think about it before I can say it. In depth, or more in depth, what is the advantage of going to one of these trade shows, whether it's Coverings, CEVISAMA, or Chusai, as an industry professional on my end as an installer, and on your end as a distributor and an expert and a designer? What's the benefit for our businesses and for expanding our companies?
Well, usually, all the product drops are at these shows. So if you're a manufacturer and people are coming from around the world to the show, you're going to drop your new lines, your new products. But what they also do, a lot of times they'll show products as new products. They have yet to commit to produce those products, because designing them is a long process. It could take years to design a product and put the final touches on it, but still doesn't mean it's going to go into production. They need to, some factories go to these shows, present it, and see if they get enough orders or enough interest, and then they decide to go into production.
Design community feedback and industry feedback?
Yeah, they get the feedback. I mean, usually if they're taking it to the point of the show, they're pretty sure it's going to go forward, but there's usually a surprise, right? Sometimes there's a product they think is going to do so well, and it doesn't, or the other way around. There's a product, that just, sometimes I think something's going to do great, and sometimes it doesn't. So it really is a good test. You have all the experts from around, the world coming to these shows, and it's a little bit of a testing ground. And these factories anticipate distributors to show up, see the new products. Sometimes they're fighting, because sometimes there's territories involved. Like, I want to be exclusive for the Northern Hemisphere, or for North Carolina, or for the whole country, or wherever. So it really is, it's really exciting. So why is it important? So if you're in the industry, depending on your level in the industry, if you're a designer, then you go in there to see the newest trends. If you're a distributor, you want to go there to see what you're going to be importing and bringing in and presenting to your customers, because your customers rely on you to be on the cutting edge. But there's another reason, and I'm going to ask you this. Okay. A lot of these trade shows have areas where you can learn about installing or technical things. I know at Coverings you've been involved in those. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is the chance to get all industry professionals together. When you're there, you're able to put your heads together and talk about those new things that are innovations in the industry. Now, on my end, it's not necessarily colors and designs, and it's the formats and how things are installed, and then new setting material products or new trim products and how to put those in. And it's good to see those, because just as the architects and designers are seeing them, I'm going to see them soon in specifications, and I want to know if there are any things that I need to be aware of, or should I price it differently? It was a big deal when thin gauge porcelain came out now it's been almost probably 15 years.
Right.
It was like, how do you install it? You've got to have all this equipment, and these pieces are 10 foot by 5 foot. And that was a big deal. And there was this learning curve that I was seeing in the install industry, that there were some people that didn't know what they were bidding on, and they were bidding it too cheap, and it was not doing well. So going to these industry events gets you into that realm, and where you can see what's going on. And also, they do a good job of having live installs. The setting material manufacturers put on these trainings. So, and unfortunately, I've never been to Chersai or CEVISAMA. I have been to a one in Brazil, which was, I don't remember, Alta Vista, maybe, I can't remember the name of it, but it was very similar. So people together that are in the same industry, putting their heads together, figuring things out, looking at new stuff, and learning, and just keeping that knowledge up. And that's what I love about it.
I would think on the installation end, years ago, tiles just changed some style, some colors, but now the technology, all of a sudden you have tile that's, 6 millimeters thin. You have tiles at 5 foot by 10 foot. You have tiles that are very dimensional. So I think the technology is so good in producing tile. It has broader products out there that are completely different. Installation methods need to be reinvented.
Absolutely. And I like what this Facebook user says. I'm sorry, the name didn't come up. Trade shows are a truly global event that show 40 countries making appearance. And I don't know if that, I think that maybe.
That's definitely coverings. Coverings is more of a global event, where in CEVISAMA there's 5 or 6 or 7 European countries that usually exhibit, and more, but definitely coverings has over 40 countries for sure. So on these new products, the designers and the tile people, dream up these crazy products at night, and they produce it and then throw it in the market, and nobody's installed them yet. Like when glass tile came out, right? Nobody knew what the heck to do with glass tile. We talked about it once before. And sometimes the installation end needs to catch up. Now, what's the industry guidelines? Who produces those guidelines, and how long does it take when a new product is launched? Do they realize they need to come out with new guidelines for installation methods?
It's a process. The NTCA, the National Tile Contractors, or TCNA, Tile Contractors North America, they produce, and I have it down here on my shelf somewhere, they produce the installation methods. I will say they're very careful and calculated in how they come up with these. It takes several different industry professionals going back and forth on the best way to handle a different situation. For example, like we talked about the thin gauge porcelain, it took them years to develop guidelines for that. And same thing with glass tile. And the worst thing that could happen is that the industry recommends something, and then we figure out 5 or 6 years later that it doesn't work. So I would say they're very cautious, but they're a big sponsor of coverings, and they do live demonstrations. They do live trainings. They're certifying tile installers at coverings every year for the last 5 or 6 years. And that's through the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation. All that stuff is amazing that you can find out there. And there's tile installers that feel like they can earn their wings, earn that, it's not a diploma from the CTEF, which gives the industry great credibility. And when you're working with a client, you can feel good to say, hey, listen, hire yourself a CTEF certified installer, and know that you're not going to have an installation issue. All those things happens at these trade shows. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, what I'm hearing from you is a new product comes out, and let's say it's innovative. The manufacturers probably have their own recommendations. It doesn't mean it's the exact correct way to do it, but there's a lag time between something that comes out and the time that TCNA comes up with a guideline for it. Right. Correct. And in that period, you really want to make sure you're dealing with a professional tile installer who's going to have to make his own decisions almost as to which method to embrace. Because like I said, manufacturers usually have that, but
Yeah.
it's probably not that in depth sometimes, right? And they're not thinking of all the different scenarios. They just want to, get the product out there. They give their technical advice, which is usually good, but it's sometimes not all encompassing, right?
And also a story, if you want to hear a cringy story.
Yeah.
And this is the most recent one, so I could go back to thin gauge porcelain. Thin gauge porcelain comes in thin panels, and the thinnest panel that they make are 3 millimeters. Well, I was working with a vendor that had produced 3 millimeters, 6 millimeters in Europe, and they were putting it everywhere. Of course, they imported it, and a client came to me and said, I want to redo my lobby. It had some 80s granite in it, which was a great substrate for a thin panel to go direct bond to that floor. Well, because of their transitions, they said, well, we can't go any greater than 1/4 of an inch. I said, well, to do that, you're going to have to put a 3 millimeter piece of, this piece was 3 foot by 6 foot, I think, or I don't remember the exact size, on the floor. And that's going to be your floor. So that's 1/4 inch of tile. And I had the best tile installer in my area, and we went through that with the best products, and it's 100% bonded. And that porcelain tile, 3 millimeters thick, is part of that granite. It will never come up in big pieces. A month later, TCNA puts out their recommendations that nothing smaller than 5.6 millimeters is supposed to go on the floor. And I'm like, oh crap. But that's a guideline and a recommendation. But if you have a good quality material, a quality installer, sometimes you can push those. I don't recommend that all the time or anytime really, but it worked. And that lobby is still amazing. You can roll a marble across that floor. And that just goes to show sometimes that lag time, you gotta make some decisions on your own, good decisions, educated decisions to get the installation done and to serve the client.
Well, to the contractors that are watching, you have to be careful because you're charging for labor. You're not making money on material 99% of the time. That used to be the case. Installers used to say, I'll get the tile, and they add $1 a foot, and those times are gone. There's too much transparency in the world where you know the price of everything. So sometimes they'll have the ability to mark up the material up front and say, look, I'm marking up just because I'm handling it, but they're not making money on that. They're just covering their costs for handling the material. So they're charging for the labor, and labor is competitive. So the last thing you want to do is and I'll bring the glass tile back because it's a great example in the industry. Glass tile came out and tiles used to be $3 a foot or $2 or $3 or $5. And glass was $20 a foot, let's say. And now you're installing and you're responsible. I would say a lot of contractors know how to put glass tile in very well, because they probably ripped out 1 or 2 jobs in the beginning, and they'll never ever do that again.
Trial and error can be expensive.
The trial and error. It's an expensive way to learn when you have to, and also when you're installing product. Now you have to get new material. You got to rip the tile off. Now the substrate's probably destroyed, so now you need new sheetrock or whatever you're doing. It's a disaster. It really is a disaster. So it is really recommended that people follow TCNA guidelines that have tested methods that have been vetted over the course of years. But who makes the decision? Is that like Craig Cahoon behind a desk? Like, who's on these panels?
Oh, the panels are made up of industry professionals. I'm not sure how many, but there's 10 to 12 to 20. I don't know.
Right.
And they rotate. So it's not like a regime. And it's a mixture of installers, manufacturers, distributors, and I'm pretty sure distributors are part of that. If you're in the tile industry and you want to contribute and you got some knowledge, you can be a part of that group, and they vote, and it's like a little Congress.
Well, when you say manufacturers, I'm sure you mean the people who are producing the tile, but I'm sure it's heavily weighted on the people that are making the setting materials, because sometimes they have to devise new configurations, new formulas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, setting material manufacturers absolutely are part of that group also.
Remember, thin set used to be thin only, right? And then here's a great example. Then those medium beds thin set, right? Where they make thin, because thin set, the thicker it is, the weaker it is, unless it's a special type of thin set, which is, I guess, a medium bed. And the thinner it is, the stronger. I mean, to a certain degree, you need enough to bond, right? But the medium bed thin sets, which is kind of an oxymoron, didn't need to exist until certain products came out, right? And
which is now called large and heavy tile mortar, because medium bed mortar was everybody was saying, I want a medium bed thin set, and like you said, it's an oxymoron,
right? Okay,
but yeah, you're right. Until the tile started growing in size, you didn't need that. You could use a quarter by quarter trowel and get full coverage with your thin set.
I think with tile, particularly the 6 millimeter, really super thin slabs, the strength of the product, if it's made well, is very important, but the substrate is just critical, right? You can have the strongest tile in the world if you have a bad substrate. And what we mean by substrate, I'm sure everyone knows, is what's underneath the tile.
Right.
And do you need expansion joints, right? Do you need a certain type of setting material that bonds? Hey, I remember when thin set was $6 a bag for gray, and it didn't work on porcelains. Like, I'm going back now to the original problem. The original problem was people used to have ceramic tile, like a red body tile that has very porous clay, not a pasta bianca, which would be a white, which would be a coto back, like a red back. Spanish tiles were always red body. Italian tiles were always red body years ago. I'm talking the 70s maybe. And what was happening is porcelain came out, and the definition of porcelain has a lot of characteristics, but the real test of porcelain is the porosity of the tile, right? So if it's a very, very low porosity, it is classified as porcelain. And here's something that not everybody knows, that porcelain is really a type of ceramic tile. Marketing wise, the industry kind of made it two categories, but in reality, ceramic is the overall arching word for, and porcelain is underneath that. And what was happening when porcelain came out and became popular, people were using the basic thin sets, and the moisture from the thin set was being sucked into the red body clay, and the tile wasn't bonding. It would become brittle. And then they came up with new thin sets. What do they put in the thin sets to help that out?
A bunch of chemicals.
Okay.
When you had those porous tiles, cement, which is what thin set is, when Henry Rothberg invented thin set, it was really just cement and latex. So
really? From Latacrete? I didn't know he invented that. Really?
Yeah, from Latacrete.
Wow.
He worked for an asphalt company, I believe, and it's a great story about how that was done. And he put glue, which is latex, with cement to try to keep from having those big, if you've ever torn out a bathroom in a 50s home, the all those mud thick set installations. Well, what that did is the cement bonds mechanically because it has little fingers, and I've got a diagram. It grows into the tile. Right. Well, when the tile became porcelain, it's not pervious, so it was having a hard time getting those fingers of the thin set in there, and they weren't bonding really well. So that's when, I don't know who went back to the drawing board, but I'm sure Latacrete did at some point in time, and the other manufacturers, Mapei and Tech, and developed, kind of worked on that ratio of glue, which is a chemical bond, and cement to get that bond together. And that's when it changed. It changed from the simple cement and glue to now it's got, there's some that's got Kevlar in it, fiber, resins, and all sorts of stuff that you can't pronounce and you don't want to eat.
Do people still use organic adhesives like a bucket of glue?
Yes, a lot. Being a commercial contractor, not that much. I didn't see it that much, but I know that there are a ton of residential contractors use that. And another fun story is the only person I ever kicked off a job site, that's what they were doing. They were using a bucket of glue in a shower, which in that day and time is a no-no. Now they say you can, but I still don't like it. I'm a big proponent of thin set and mortar-based adhesives. I think buckets of glue do really good for a dry area, a backsplash. and I'll probably stick to that until I die.
Well, what happens is the glue, it's an organic adhesive. It needs air to dry, right? And what happens is it's in a shower, then all of a sudden there's moisture in the air, and it just never has the time to dry. And it's not inexpensive. I think some of the reasons the contractors embrace the thin set is because the thin set is, relatively speaking, much cheaper than a bucket of glue.
So it requires more skill. That was the when I was coming up in the industry in the early 2000s. You'd see a lot of guys, the bucket and trowel guys that had a pickup truck. They'd go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy a couple of buckets, a bucket of glue, and it stuck for a little bit because it was easy. Mixing thin set was different, and it was more difficult to work with. The glue stuck to the wall, stuck to your trowel, stuck to the tile initially, and they just were putting up tile, and it was an issue for a while. But I think the industry has done a good job in teaching, all right, thin set is not that hard if you take their time. And I say this probably 100 times a week. Read the directions, measure the water, and it's going to work perfectly. It's going to be great.
Do you find guys that still like just throw thin set in a bucket and add water like they're making,
all
the
time. And then they, it gets a little stiff and they add a little bit more water. And that's the worst thing you can do to it. It's now there are some, I talk to the team often about margin, working within a margin. There's a margin of error in everything. But when it comes to the simple things like measuring water, just measure the water. I mean, it's not that hard.
I remember a presentation that you did. It was an education presentation. It was actually in a ballroom at the TWA Hotel in JFK. And you actually brought like measured bottles of water and saying, measure it. Don't just, throw the thin set in the bucket and just turn the spigot on, because the people at Ladder Creative, Mapei, all these factories, tech, they work so hard to come up with like the best formula, and you come in and just like throw it off.
And it's chemistry. I mean, you are making something, and you wouldn't do that to a cake. I use that example all the time. If you're baking a cake, Betty Crocker or homemade, you get your measuring cup out. And this is a lot more. I mean,
that's why I don't bake. See, I like to cook, but I'll cook something where it doesn't matter if I change it up every time. So that's not baking, because baking, right, you need half a teaspoon of yeast or something. I'd be like, I don't know.
And that training session that you were there is live online on my YouTube channel.
Is it really?
Yeah, and I've got you in there asking me questions, because you always like to ask questions. Which is
know what? Tile interests me.
Well, John, we spent a little bit more time than I thought. Tell me, give us the review of CEVISAMA. I'm gonna back. So the CEVISAMA is a show, and there's about 850 exhibitors. Spain, France, Germany, Portugal, Russia, Germany. I think I mentioned Germany. They all have booths there, and they're showing their products. And it really is an incredible show. I have to say the Spanish factories do a really great job in design. You can see here, Craig showing a bunch of things. If he keeps it on the slide, the top left, you'll see that like ribbed kind of a wood look. And then the dimensional tiles, different decorative tiles, really nice material. It says feel the texture, because the technology now has allowed the industry to create products with a lot of texture. It used to be you can only do certain things with ceramics with texture. Now you could take even porcelains and they can add textures. Some of it's with printing, some of it's being extruded, some of it being pressed. So I see a lot of that today with three-dimensional. I actually have some on my desk that three-dimensional wall tiles that are really cool looking.
Well, I have to say, some of these pictures are just hot off the press. These were sent. We have people boots on the ground in Spain right now sending us pictures of hottest new things. So these aren't just press release products. These are things that are just hot, and that some of our team from New York is actually looking at and talking about and ordering. And there's other products too that they sent pictures of, and you'll see in the next slide. There's there's a lot of nice material. So you could see.
I see a lot of the terrazzo look tile.
Yeah.
And hot.
Terrazzo is so hot. And when I say terrazzo, I mean the real terrazzo, but I also mean terrazzo porcelain or porcelain that looks like terrazzo or terrazzo. And, the original terrazzo was, in Europe where they had a lot of stone being used in different areas. And there's always scraps of stone floating around. And they decided to throw it in cement because it still looked good. And they found a way to, put that into a tile form in real tiles, like a 24 by 24 tile, or in a porcelain that looks like, I think that one in the middle could, you can't tell, it could be real. I would be surprised if that's not porcelain. And then if you look to the left of that, there's a tile with a high variation of shading. In the industry, there are dye lots, right? And people, if that was not intended to be shaded, that would be like, that white tile would be like 12 different dye lots there, and you'd be sued because it's horrible. But this is intentional, and the look is phenomenal, and it's taken off. I see people. This is really a hot look, a tile that has high shade variation, and it's beautiful. And sometimes designers ask, "Well, what do I do? How do I tell the installer to install?" If you're buying from a quality supplier, then the tile installer can technically just close his eyes, pull the tiles out of the box, and slap it up on the wall. And
I would still shuffle them, wouldn't you?
You'd still what?
Shuffle the tiles.
Yeah, make sure you're putting
several boxes and pull from different boxes too.
Yeah, that's actually a good suggestion. The tile industry, many guys do not do that, but the industry knows that you're supposed to pull from multiple boxes at one time in case the lots kind of are heavy, darker in one box. But
the high variation, I think it's just a good rule of thumb to follow.
Yeah, it is. Now, if it's natural marble, then the guy needs to look at it, right? The installer needs to look at to make sure the veining, the quality, the texture. So when you're installing natural stone, there's more onus on the installer to make sure, because you can't have a beautiful master bathroom with a $50 square foot Calicut marble and right like in the spot that's so visible to the homeowner or to the job site that happens to have a natural imperfection that's not a defect, it's just natural, like a knot of wood. But you may have a super expensive dining room table out of wood and you'll see knots, but sometimes maybe there's a knot that's not pleasing looking, so you have to really pay attention. So
that's why you don't hire the lowest bidder on a project like that.
Yeah, you should never hire the lowest bidder. So the show, you'll see here, look at these are huge vignettes. So we say 850 exhibitors. Some of them are 100 by 100 booths or bigger, and sometimes a second level with stairs in the middle. And you'll see a lot of decorative tile. I see a lot of old school stuff coming back like there.
Yeah,
that's pretty
print
cool.
Tiles. That was big, like in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. Well, everything comes back, right? I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, look at that. That is
These
so
wall
cool.
panels. These are some of that thin gauge porcelain.
Yeah, so those are probably 5 foot by 10 foot slabs, right, of porcelain. This is really nice. I haven't even seen all these images. This is really cool.
I like this, which is showing the same series, but showing that you can get the same look in different textures, which gives you a completely different feel.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. I like that. Yeah, so look at that. Beautiful.
And I think those feathers, that's what you have in your bedroom, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so you see on the right that kind of Koto color and the blue, this kind of textural, right? And then the other side is more, decorative pattern tiles.
And what's great, John, and my wife will attest to this. I can't match my clothes, so I just wear gray all the time. But to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, these are 4 different tiles, but I would dare say that they're meant to go in the same area, in the same room.
Well, from a color perspective, yes, for sure. There are certain scenarios where you want to do a feature wall and do something really busy, or a highlight wall. And that's where you would use the highly decorative modeled looking tile.
Feathers and leaves.
Exactly. So, and and then the rest of the room can be the other product, or it could be something super plain, not even shown in that picture. So here's a great example. We talked about subway tiles recently. Well, subway tiles, in the dictionary, well, I haven't looked, but in the dictionary, subway tile should be 3-inch by 6-inch white tile, right? But here you have a tile that's probably, what size you think that is?
Those look like maybe 4x8s.
Yeah, 4x8 tiles. You see the blues and the reds and the greens.
What about the floor tile there? The cement look.
Yes. So there's a term called encaustic tile, which is a technique, an age-old technique of manufacturing tile, and it used to involve like a mold, like a cookie mold with different channels in it, and you pour the concrete base, and then the topping kind of gets the different colors and creates a pattern.
Right.
But now we can create that in porcelains to mimic encaustic tile. And encaustic tile per se, real encaustic, is still being used, but it has its downsides. The cost, it's usually a little thicker than normal tile. It definitely has some
very absorbent.
Yeah, it is. The encaustic tile does have some porosity because it is concrete. I mean, yes, they may add some ingredients to cut down on the absorbency, or you could seal it after the fact. And that's how you had to use. That's what you had to do if you wanted an encaustic look, until the technology allowed porcelains to become really cool and create looks that are very authentic. Because there's always ways of making something look like something else, but in the past it was kind of hokey, like when marble, when people used to make a marble tile, like a porcelain to look like, or a ceramic tile to look like marble, but the vein was in the same corner, like on every tile, and you put 500 feet of it down. It's bad.
I think of like a 1990s drop-in Chinese restaurant.
Exactly, in green with a white vein, and it was horrible. But now there are different faces of tile, so in one production you'll actually see many different veins where it looks natural. And so here's a great example.
Is this tile or is this stone?
Well, yeah, this is look, it says onyx on the wall in the back, but that's probably the name of the series. Yeah, there's no way that's onyx. It could be, but I'm sure it's not. That's porcelain that looks exactly like onyx. If that was onyx, that would be like completely unaffordable for anybody, probably, in those size pieces. And they built it into the cabinetry, so that's another telltale sign that it's probably thin gauge, because you're probably not putting a 3/4 inch piece of stone into a piece of cabinet. Look at that, really cool. These are all fresh pictures. This is all straight from Valencia. Really nice.
Straight from the orange capital of Spain.
So you see people walking around there. There's about 92,000 people that attend CEVISAMA every year. It's been growing. And as far as the product mix, I would say it's about 60% tile.
Okay.
And by tile, I mean stone as well. But then there's companies, 10% of it's about fixture companies, people that are ancillary businesses. So if you're in the business and you want these racks to display tile, and then there's setting materials. Around 10% of the show is setting materials. And then right there, if you stay on that slide, around another 10% is our fixtures, bathroom fixtures, sinks. Spain is really good at producing a lot of bathroom fixtures. Now, I say Spain, not every manufacturer at CEVISAMA is from Spain, but most of them are. So if my math is correct, 60, 10, 10, and 10 on this 10% of the show, I don't know what it's about, but that's 90% of the show.
Like this guy's looking at sinks.
Yeah, he's looking at sink basins. Yeah, and it's interesting. Some people may not realize this, but even though sinks are made out of ceramic and tiles made out of ceramic, it's never the same company. There's no crossover between ceramic tile, porcelain tile, and a fixture company. It's only together here in the show because a lot of the products are being used in bathrooms or places where there's plumbing.
Well, and it helps with the design. There's a different angle. Yeah. It helps when you've got a designer, a client, they want to look at the whole room. They want to look at the whole bathroom. So they're going to buy this boat-shaped piece of stone bathtub, and then they're going to mix it up with their tile.
Well, go back to that stone tub. So marketing wise, I wouldn't call it boat shaped for a $20,000 tub. That probably is. I would say it's like a freestanding carved natural stone. That's really marble carved. So just picture that. That was a block of marble in a mountain. I would bet that that's what that is, carved. And
exactly what it looks like.
you know, and I guess the word Marbello in the back gave it away, but it's carved. The one problem I have with that is, I mean, it's gorgeous. It is really nice, but think about putting hot water in that. How much of that heat is going to be transferred into that stone before you get in it? So people have purchased years ago, before they had inline heaters in like Whirlpool hot tubs.
Yeah.
You put hot water in a cast iron tub years ago, or even a hot tub that's acrylic, and the temperature drops, you know, it drops. So that stone is really nice, but not very practical. So the CEVISAMA show is ending today, and a lot of people attending. It's really going to be a record-breaking show. We've gotten a lot of reports back that the attendance is phenomenal, and it really, but you know what that means? That means there's another show coming up. See, we talked about coverings.
Yep.
And then we talk about CEVISAMA, and maybe another show. We'll talk about the show that's in Italy, in Bologna, Tradeshow, which is, I have an affinity to, because I've been to many Tradeshow. And, you know, I just checked before. It said the show was 38 years old, I believe. And I had gone the first time with my father, and I think I was 18 years old. And I did the math, and it almost brings me back to year one. So I may have been to the first Tradeshow show. When I had gone there, I mean, my dad didn't give me the background. I just was going to the show thinking it was already an established show. Within 1 year, I probably attended the first show. And then within a few years, I was going on my own, being the buyer for my family business when we had our own tile stores in New York. So I'm going to research that a little, but I was quite surprised when I saw that. It was pretty interesting. So what's your favorite tile trend?
I have never been to Tradeshow, but I'm looking for a ride.
Well, yeah. Well, Tradeshow is pretty cool because the Bologna Fairgrounds is it's a government kind of fairgrounds. And what they mean by fairgrounds is multiple buildings. It's a complex. So there are probably 10 buildings or more. Usually one level. There's 1 or 2 that are 3 or 4 levels.
Right.
And you're walking around, and then between the buildings, there's these big common areas, you know, like these with trees and walking areas, and it's all paved, but it's all within this complex. So once you're at the fairgrounds, you're just going from building to building. The buildings are pretty much glass. So as you're walking by, you're looking into these buildings, and you're seeing tile everywhere. And the one building that has 3 or 4 levels, maybe 4, that's typically fixtures, bathroom fixtures. So the Italian show, Tradeshow, is very similar to the CEVISAMA show in Spain as far as, you know, the product mixture. And if anyone ever has a chance to get to these shows, you really should. I mean, it's just amazing. And at these shows, they not only do product demonstrations, they do installation demonstrations. They also have, I wouldn't say contests, but they're usually announcing winners of contests that they've had. Like this year at CEVISAMA, they have something on the most sustainable product. And so a lot of these shows, like many typical shows, they'll have some kind of award ceremony and things like that. So it's really pretty cool. And I'm excited about coverings that's coming up. It really is. It's going to be good. It's around 7 weeks out.
It's going to be fun. That's the one I know the best, because it's other than the one that I went to. I did go to a Brazil Revistar. I looked it up several years ago, and very similar. Brazilian contractors, Brazilian manufacturers selling tile.
Brazil has a strong tile. Yeah, they have a strong tile production sector. Not as strong as Italy or Spain.
A lot of ceramics.
Yeah, wall tile, a lot of wall tile. Not much floor tiles. Where Italy is really, it's kind of evolved, but Italy has become really a stronghold for porcelains. Not that they don't do ceramic wall tiles. So for these conversations, even though I did say, porcelain is a type of ceramic, but in the industry, when someone says ceramic, they usually mean a wall tile. And when they say porcelain, it's a real porcelain floor tile, which could be used on a wall. But Italy has been really strong in porcelain. Spain has been really strong on ceramics, ceramic wall tiles. And there are factories that do both for sure.
John, hold on a second. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did.
We got some news, some breaking news just arriving from Covering.
We do have some news. So we have some news for everybody. We were just invited to do our podcast at the Coverings show. Wow. And so the Tile Happy Hour will be debuting first time at the Covering show. They have a podcast. I think it's called the Coverings Podcast Booth. Yep. And they have select podcasts being presented or recorded live on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I believe.
That's it.
And I think we have a time slot that's locked up. They reached out to us and they're like, "We want you there." And
who wouldn't really?
Yeah, we're really happy about that. So stay tuned for those details. I think it's exciting. I think it's going to be on the Wednesday. We're firming that up, but that is breaking news. Really excited to share that with everyone. Now, so whoever's watching this, if you're watching this on a recorded, please leave a comment. If you've been to any shows, we'd love to know. If you've been to Chisai, CEVISAMA, if you've been to Coverings, if you're going to Coverings, if you're going to Chisai, what your favorite tile trends are, past or present.
Excited about.
Yeah. It really makes us happy. So we'd love to talk to everyone. We'll get back to. We're very responsive, and we're really glad to be here with you today. If you're watching this, you're obviously a tile nerd or a tile expert, like we are.
I consider myself a nerd.
Okay, and we're really happy that you're here. These podcasts are going to keep going on, having a conversation. We do have some other breaking news. We're going to have a special guest. We're not going to say who yet. We have some really exciting special guests coming on from different sectors, be it from the design end, from a technical end, the manufacturer's end, and sometimes even some ancillary parts of the business that may be of interest to everyone. We do have a lot of people that are interested to be part of the show. So if you are that person and want to be part of the show, we'll bring you on. We have the technology to bring people on, like another screen. How does that work?
Smoke screens.
All right.
We do smoke screens. No. Yeah, absolutely. We can have a party line and we'll fill this screen up with as many people as we can. And like we started, we'll finish. This is your podcast. We love the tile industry. And it's just because it's what I know. I'm passionate about it. I love teaching the stuff that I know. John loves selling it and teaching it, and we've seen a lot of stuff, and we want to answer your questions. We want to talk about what's hot in the industry, what's not, what's going on. I heard some news the other day. I'm going to wait till it's public. Also, that is I don't know. It's not necessarily controversial, but I want to get a couple more sources. I don't ever want to outkick my coverage. Yeah, that's a football thing. But just, this is your show. We want to interact with you. We have several social media sites that are going all the time. The podcast is broadcast on John's LinkedIn. It's on both our YouTube channels. I think on Twitter accounts, which both John and I cannot really figure out how to use that well. But if you send us a question, we may make a whole show about it. We may bring you on, whatever. We want to talk about this. We love the industry. We want to continue growing the knowledge and learning together. And John, as I always say, we want to tile the world.
Absolutely. We definitely want to tile the world. Craig has his Friday fails. I have my Friday, we call it a happy hour product highlight, which I'll be posting today. Some really nice stuff that you have to see. So definitely check it out. And this is John Tedisco, and I like to wish you peace, health, and happiness.